nervous all the time, so I kind of pace. Hopefully everyone can hear me. The Honor Remember mission is to establish one symbol for all the fallen soldiers throughout history. That is the one thing that we are missing in our country. We do have the POWMIA flag that was adopted and accepted by the United States Congress. That does not represent our fallen. That represents a completely different issue, and George will kind of explain to you as he gets up here of what happened, how he got on this mission, and why he's here today. This is his 26th state that he's been to, and throughout it, we've had states adopt this flag unanimously. So we're hoping that North Dakota will do that as well. We've had commitments from the governor on down saying this is a wonderful idea, and we believe that the fallen soldiers need to be represented throughout history. And with that, I would like to introduce the governor of the great state of North Dakota.
Thanks to all of you for being here. George, thank you not only for being here today, but for your mission to honor and recognize our fallen soldiers. And we can't do enough to say thank you to all of our men and women in uniform, all of our veterans, all of those who are serving today, all of those who have served, and to the families, and especially, and we're here today especially to say thank you and God bless unto those soldiers who made the ultimate sacrifice, and to their families, and to recognize Dennis Furterer. And in recognizing Dennis Furterer, we're recognizing all those fallen soldiers, all those soldiers who made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation, for the cause of freedom. So Dennis, to you, and Nina, to you, on behalf of your son, Dennis, we say thank you. We say thank you to you as a family. And again, we recognize Dennis for his amazing contribution, for making the ultimate sacrifice for us and for our nation. And he is symbolic of what soldiers since the very beginning of our country have been willing to do. Step up and put it all on the line for us, so that we have a country, and so that we can live in freedom. And I want to make sure I recognize all of our families who have lost a soldier. And so before I come back and talk a little bit more about Dennis and this recognition ceremony, I also want to acknowledge and recognize Liz and Tom Sweet and their son TJ for his service in the United States Army. And of course, TJ is from right here in Bismarck. We're members of the same parish. And thank you to you, to your family. Thank you to TJ. And I know, just like Dennis, TJ is with us in spirit. Not with us in body, but with us in spirit. Also to Bob and Lynn Koenig, and to their son Lance Koenig from Carrington. Of course, at the time he was serving, he was living in Fargo. And served our nation in Iraq and did an amazing job leading his troops. Was an amazing wrestler, and it was just kind of a leader of men and women from an early age, you know, being an outstanding athlete and all, and certainly was a leader for our troops. But he's here with us in spirit as well. But we thank Lance, and we thank you, and we thank you for being here today. And also to Addie Reese. And Addie, we thank you for Kenneth. Kenneth worked for the Bismarck school system for many, many years, and I've known your family, of course, from Minot days, way back when. But also, Kenneth was a real leader, also sergeant, and somebody that I know the troops look to for guidance, and somebody who made a real difference for them. Made a real difference for a lot of school kids over in the Bismarck High system as well. But Addie, we thank you for being here and for your support. any families. Tried to make sure I didn't. I want to thank our legislators that are here. Senator Dick Devers, Senator, thank you for being here. Representative George Kaiser. George served in Vietnam. And I didn't even know that. But George served in Vietnam, and we had a recognition ceremony for Vietnam veterans, which I think is particularly wonderful, given the fact that there weren't the welcome homes the way there should have been during the Vietnam War. George told a little bit about his story, but it's great to have you here, George, and thank you for your service as well. And Senator Tracy Potter, Senator, thank you for being here, and I know you're going to present a flag, and that's great. To our Patriot Guard riders, Legion riders, to all of the veterans and others that now ride motorcycle and come to these events, not only to honor, but in some cases to stand guard at some of the funerals. Thank you for being here and for what you do every time we have a send-off, a welcome home, we have a funeral, we have any of our military salutes, recognition ceremonies. You're always there, and I thank you for it. And I thank our veterans and the veterans organizations, whether it's the American Legion or DFW, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, our Vietnam veterans, all of our organizations, and the auxiliaries. Bob Black's here with representing the Army Reserve, Colonel Black, and also representing employers that do so much for our Guard and Reserves, ESGR. Now I'm going to come back to where I started, and then I'll finish up. I've gone on long enough. Dennis Furter represents the kind of soldier that not only is North Dakota extremely proud of, but this nation is extremely proud of, man or woman. These are young people that put on the uniform and they put it all on the line. And that's exactly what Dennis did. And there's nothing we can do, no matter what, that will ever honor him enough or thank him enough for what he did for all of us. I know you as a family pay the biggest price. It's the toughest for you. And there's nothing we can do to truly rise to the level of his sacrifice. But we just want you to know that in our hearts and our prayers, he'll always be there. And through the efforts of George, who lost his son in Iraq, and others who have made the ultimate sacrifice, and all of us who have benefited from their commitment and all they have done, know that we will honor them and remember them. We say thank you. I truly believe they are with us in spirit, and we will see them again. But thank you. God bless.
I'm really humbled to be up here to represent our service members in uniforms, past, present, and future, and by extension their families, to just be here to witness this initiative. We really do need something to be a symbol for those that have paid that sacrifice, that ultimate sacrifice. At this time, I think it's probably very much the time to do this, if not past the time to do this. To have this initiative come through, to have this initiative be part of what will be a very good symbol for those who have given that service, that ultimate service. I thank you for the opportunity to be here. I thank you for all that you've done, the sacrifice that you've made. I think that this initiative is the right thing at the right time, and so I appreciate the opportunity to be here. At this time, George, if you come up, it's your turn.
I think we can do Tracy first.
Tracy?
Yeah, we'll save George for last.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's really an honor to be invited to be here. Thanks, Boots. This is, partisanship is something that they always say that we leave at the end of the land and before the oceans start, and we also leave it when we're talking right back here at home, talking about our brave young men and women who sacrificed for us. I'm the state senator for District 35, and you're in District 35. I hope you're having a good time here today. Welcome, and I'd like to acknowledge my predecessor here as well. This is in previous wars. In previous wars, we asked for sacrifice from all Americans. The victory gardens of World War I, the bond issues in World War II. You couldn't go to a movie during the Second World War without hearing that you had to buy bombs on your way out of the theater. We asked for sacrifice. We've asked for sacrifice from our young men and women in this one. And at this point, all we can do is say thank you and say at least we can honor and remember. And that's why Mr. Lutz here, George, this program is so beautiful, because it unites all the soldiers from all time in the United States. Brings together, there's not a distinction between those World War II veterans, and the Vietnam veterans, and the veterans today. They're all our people. They're all the ones who fought for America. So with that, I want to say thank you. And we have, I've been asked to give you, George, a flag that flew over the state capitol on September 11th, 2009, when the governor dedicated that wonderful memorial at Frayne Barracks. And with 300 Patriot Guards there, riders there, honoring, and the 600 people that were there, and the 21 families from North Dakota, this flag flew over our capitol.
Yes. George Lutz, ladies and gentlemen, the founder of Honor and Remember. Yeah.
I just want to make sure everyone can hear, because I don't yell. She has a I'm going to use this if that's okay. What an honor it is to be here, mostly because I get to grow my family with those of a kindred spirit. And that's part of my healing. Thank you, Governor, for taking the time to be here, and those of you that he mentioned. You know, I hope that in a moment you will realize that you are joining me in a part of history. Let me start by saying that on December 29th, 2005, my son was killed by a sniper's bullet in Iraq. I got that knock on the door the next day, on the morning of the 30th, when those two uniformed soldiers came to the door with those words, "We regret to inform you." And it's those words that a parent cannot plan for. They cannot prepare, and they can't think will ever happen. And the thoughts that came through my head certainly were shock. Maybe they were at the wrong house. Maybe he was just wounded. But no, the inevitable, the finality of that realization had to hit me. I wasn't ever going to see his face again. He would never walk through that door. I would never hear him on the telephone. And there isn't a word for that. Devastated isn't big enough to cover it. So what do you do with those emotions? How do you handle that? How do you manage that? How do you go on? I will tell you honestly that I didn't want to go on. As parents, we all wished it was us and not them. And the only thing I knew to do was to start to look for all of the memories that I could find that had anything to do with his life. Photographs, emails, videotapes, anything that I could put my hands on that would remind me one more day of his life. Because my fear was that I would forget what he looked or that I would forget what he sounded like. And after I got to the end of that process, my son was married, had 2 children. He had left home a while ago. So the memories I had were limited. So I went to his friends, and I asked them what memories they had. Did they have any pictures? Could they give me any stories? What could they tell me about him? So that I could have one more day of memory. And that came to an end. And I realized that he was serving in the United States Army, and that he trained with his buddies, and he was deployed with his buddies. So I went out to them, and I tried to find out what kind of a soldier was he? How did he do his job? Were they proud of him? Again, I wanted one more moment of his life. I wanted to know what he did that day, what he had for breakfast. Anything becomes important. Any scrap of paper with his handwriting on it, or he might have made a grocery list, becomes important. And that came to an end. And I started to look around because I realized that he died for his country. And that the freedoms that we walk under every day come at a price. And I thought, this nation needs to remember that he died for them. Because as a nation, we have very short memories. You know, if you can remember 9/11, I think on 9/12, 9/13, you couldn't find an American flag in this country to buy because they were flying everywhere. They couldn't make them fast enough. But 6 months later, they were tattered and faded and not replaced, except by those that have that strong patriotic mindset. And so, as I looked around for the way that we publicly remember our fallen, I realized that the veterans and the active duty military do a wonderful job of remembering. Amazing job of remembering. And I found out that they're the ones that build the memorials and that put the names on the walls and put up the monuments. It's the veterans. When you look at the sponsorships of the fundraising efforts to make these things happen, every one of them, VFW, American Legion, whatever, the organization, all veteran. And what came to me is that there is a small population, maybe 1.5% of this population in the United States that's affected by the military. They have someone in active duty or they've served in some way. Very small percentage of the population. What about that 90+% of the population by which these men and women who put their lives on the line and have given their lives, what about that part of the population? How do they remember? And what I saw, the only thing I could find, were those bumper stickers that say support our troops. We've all seen them. We probably all have them. And I thought to myself, my son was a troop. I prayed for him. I supported him. He didn't come home. And I got a little angry. I don't get very angry. But let's say uncomfortable. Because when I looked at that phrase, it didn't apply to him anymore. He didn't come home. I had yellow ribbons on every tree in the front of my house. Didn't apply to him anymore. What did apply? That's what I wanted to hold on to. That's what I wanted to embrace. And I started to attend the funerals of other families after my son, and to speak with those moms and dads and those husbands and wives. And as I met with those families, I began to meet other families from past generations, from Grenada, from the Gulf, from Korea, from World War II. And every family I spoke with would tell me two things. Please don't let this have been in vain. and please don't let them be forgotten. Every single family. And as I speak to families going forward, I hear that over and over. I have to talk about my son because they don't know he's gone. I have to keep reminding my people that my son died for his country. Over and over again. And what came to me was a realization, not that anybody was at fault, but we had been programmed, in a sense, to believe that Memorial Day was our day to remember our fallen. So we're going to support our troops. Oh, we lost one. We're going to remember him on Memorial Day. See, that doesn't happen. I remember my son every day. These families here remember their sons every day. And I know my son's friends remember him every day. And the veterans and those that served with him remember him every day. Some of them have tattoos on their arms to remind them. And so that was the void in my mind. It's because we got that day that we're going to remember on that day, but everyone knows that day has become a picnic. Many don't even know we're still in Iraq and Afghanistan. They just don't know it. And yet, over 50 have been lost this month alone. Many in this part of the country. As I've been traveling through, there's been one funeral after another. That's tragic. And Reggie had mentioned the POW flag. I saw the POW flag flying everywhere. And I thought, what an amazing tribute that was. To have a flag that was adopted and established to honor those that were missing, those that were captured. We needed to have that. But as I looked around, I thought to myself, the fallen need a flag. Because in all of the flags that I have seen, and all the research that I have done, of the emblems and the symbols that we have for everything in this country, everything has a symbol attached to it. The one missing symbol, the one missing emblem, the one missing tribute was to those that gave their lives so that we could fly every flag, including the United States flag. We can't fly that flag except on the blood of those that never came home. They needed some tribute. And these families deserved some way to say thank you. It's the least we can do, is to say thank you. If we're not going to acknowledge it on a regular basis, let's at least make a statement. And so 2 years ago, on May 26th, 2008, the Honor and Remember flag was unveiled to the public. The symbolism behind this flag, I hope, will be self-explanatory, but I will explain it so that you've heard it from me. The red field stands for the blood sacrifice. The white field underneath stands for the purity of that sacrifice, because our men and women, each one to a person, was on a mission. And that mission was of a pure heart. Each one of them, and these families will tell you, said, don't worry about it. I'm safe. I've got it covered. I'll be back. The folded flag beneath, I'm going to go to the blue star. I'm sorry. The blue star on that red field goes back to World War I, when a solid blue star banner was hung on the windows and doors of military families, recognizing that they had someone in active duty. The gold star in the center of that blue star, again, goes back to World War I, signifying that that loved one was not coming home. That's where we get the term Gold Star families, Gold Star mother, Gold Star father, Gold Star wife. There are many in this country, including military, who don't know what a Gold Star means. The folded flag beneath those stars we universally recognize as a life lost in this country. This country was built on one folded flag at a time. This flag represents that one life given for this country. And I'm going to say this, not a KIA flag. This flag recognizes all those that died in a line of duty or as a result of serving. It could be training, it could be many cases. This covers all and honors all of those lives. The flames above it are an eternal reminder that we will never forget. And the words below, we will always honor their sacrifice and remember them specifically by name. There is a bill in Congress right now to officially designate the Honor and Remember flag as a national symbol of remembrance. Beyond that, many states have been contacting me and saying, we don't want to wait for Congress. We want to adopt this as a state symbol and fly it for our fallen in our states. And 6 months ago, I decided that in order to make that happen, we have about 20 states already that have written legislation. I decided 6 months ago that I would take a journey and reach every single state in this country on a 5-month deployment. And this is my 26th state, as was mentioned before. I've driven over 9,000 miles to be here, to share the message, and to meet with all those who would listen. But it goes beyond just a flag flying in the wind. There's a lot of wind around here, which is wonderful for flags. But it's more meaningful than that, because, as I mentioned, these are individual lives. They're not statistics. They're not numbers. There are men and women who have families and extended families. And it's important that we as a nation, that you as individuals within your towns, your communities, recognize that sacrifice. Because I will tell you that no matter what you do for these families, no matter how many gifts you give, no matter how many awards there are, you will not be able to give them the one thing that they really want. And they would trade it all in for one more day. And so, as an organization, it's not just about perpetually remembering our fallen as a national tribute, but it's remembering individually those that gave that sacrifice and their families. Because it's their families that are now carrying that suffering on for the rest of their lives. Now remember, these men and women, these sons and daughters, they could have done anything in this country. They could have stayed home, raised a family, contributed, but they decided selflessly to do something that many will not do, is to serve this country and to protect those here that won't go over there. And so today it is my honor to be with you today, to be able to give tribute to one family. Not that they're any more special than another, I have to say that respectfully. Because every family is special. And every family will be honored in this way, I have to say that. That this is not an isolated tribute. Every family in North Dakota will be honored in this way. But to honor the Federer family today, specifically, so that you can see what it means to give tribute to a particular family. Governor, would you join me for this, please? Sure. You could help, if you would. And when I ask Dina and Dennis to come forward, you see, the Honor and Remember flag wasn't just meant to be flown by us all generically in Thanksgiving. It was also meant to be personalized in specific tribute. And this Honor and Remember flag is folded in a triangular fashion, as you see the American flag is folded. because as it was handed to them in the memorial of their son, it was meant to stay folded permanently, respectfully, and reverently forever in tribute. But the Honor and Remember flag is meant as a thank you. It is meant to be unfolded. It is meant to be displayed. And it is not meant to be a somber memorial, but in gratitude. And we were going to present it today, and I asked the governor to read this certificate.
This Honor and Remember flag is presented with eternal gratitude and respect in memory of Specialist Dennis Perder, Jr. With this flag, we honor this patriot's unwavering dedication, remember their selfless sacrifice by displaying this symbol collectively as a nation. We humbly recognize the enormity of your loss and respectfully say thank you.
I would like to thank George for doing everything that we've all been wanting to do from the bottom of our hearts from the very first day we got that knock on our door. As usual, we didn't want our loved ones to be forgotten. And George, hopefully with your help, they won't be forgotten. But what I think is just really unique about this was George dug deeper and he went way back. And he brought all of the wars forward. And he's going to remember all of us. It's not just going to remember DJ or Lance or Tom. It's going to remember everybody. And the Patriot Guards, who are just phenomenal people, a lot of them are vets. This last weekend we had the experience of a lifetime. They did an honor service for DJ and 3 others. And again, it's really awesome, it's tearful to see how we are remembered. But what we'd really like to see, Governor Homan, is this flag in North Dakota to represent all of our fallen, not just from the recent wars, but from all wars. Thank you.
Governor, I'd like to present you with, I guess, a token of that promise, but with an Honor and Remember flag of your own, and pray that it will be displayed proudly somewhere in honor of those heroes in North Dakota. That concludes our time. I'm honored that you are here to join with these families and myself in tribute. And I'm just going to close with a quote that I often use from John F. Kennedy. And he said that a nation reveals itself not only by the men that it produces, but by the men it honors and the men it remembers.
Thrice happy is a nation with a glorious history. It is far better to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to take rank among the poor spirits who have neither enjoyed much nor suffered much, because they live in the gray twilight that knows neither victory or defeat. Words that have inspired a nation, written by 4 men who saw all the possibility and potential for the future of their country. Words full of hope and the promise of freedom. Words full of liberty. But what is liberty? We grow up going to school learning about it. We read about it in our history books, and we talk about it quite frequently. But what does liberty really mean? Liberty is defined as freedom from arbitrary or despotic government or control, or independence, or freedom from control, obligation, restriction, interference, or hampering conditions. The power or right of doing, thinking, or speaking according to choice. Now, yes, this is just a definition, but to this country, it would come to mean so much more, because this is everything our country was to be founded upon. Freedom of expression, freedom of thought, freedom of religion, and freedom of speech. Now, Benjamin Franklin, while not a president, but certainly an important figure,
She was the cookie maker for the Girl Scouts.
See, I heard about him all the time.
That's quite
No, this is Shinseki. I was at him at the White House. They fired him because they said they wasn't ready for Iraq. He went home.
So you went all the way down there?
Yeah. So what he did is retired. Called it.
You know, when you take every day, so it just kind of adds up.
And I took it over one time to be ready when we had Chinese buffet. One guy wouldn't give up his chair with that guy sitting next to him. Between the two of them, they had 36,000 hours helicopter planes.
We have them here today to make a presentation, flag of our Idaho's own family. And George, with that, thank you what?
I'm going to take a few minutes to just share with you the vision of honor and remember, and kind of why I'm here and why it's important, and what we're doing to bring remembrance across the nation. If you bear with me just a few minutes to do that. But on December 29th, 2005, I lost my son in Iraq to a sniper's bullet. And what comes out of that, what comes out of that knock on the door when two uniformed soldiers bring you those words, "We regret to inform you," is more than devastating. It's not something that a family wants to hear, but more and more families are hearing, have heard, and will be hearing, as long as we have fighting military in this country. I went through a process of grieving that took me down a different path, I guess, than some, but also similar that we all go through as Gold Star parents. And that is a process of memories. It's a process of gathering memories and holding on to whatever you can that will give you one more day to hold on to your loved one. And I began to search throughout the house and everywhere I could to try to find whatever I could hold on to, whether it be pictures or letters or cards or videotapes or anything that would just give me one more day. And when I went through that process, and that process ended because you can only open so many drawers, so many closets, I began to look outward towards his friends because he was married, he had a life outside of his home. And so I knew that there would be stories or pictures that others would have of him that I could get a hold of and again, remember for one more day. After I ended that process, because again, this is all finite, as you know, and there's only so many places you can go. Then I went outward one more place, and that was those that he served with. And I wanted to know what kind of a soldier he was, and what kind of job that he did, and what happened to him that day, and what did he have for breakfast. Anything that will give you a little bit more to put in that treasure box of memories. And that came to an end. And actually, I have to tell you that he was killed 4.5 years ago. And as I was traveling through Nebraska, I actually met the first sergeant who was with him who was killed. And this was a new revelation to me, a new story, a new something, that I could just treasure. And I know the families here have gone through similar thought processes. And when I got to the end of all of that, and as you see it's still kind of trickling, I realized that he died for his country. I realized that this country was something that he believed in and that he was proud of. And I wanted to know what the country did to remember his sacrifice publicly. And as I searched around and I researched and I talked to people, I found amazing monuments that were out there, amazing memorials that were built in tribute. And they're springing up all the time, especially now for Iraq and Afghanistan. But the thing that came to me is that almost every one of the monuments and tributes that I have seen were put together by veterans. They were organized and donated and fundraised by veterans. And I realized that many veterans are the ones that are going to see those monuments, unless they're spectacular in some way. Somebody wants to go by and see it from a tourist standpoint. That mostly those buildings and those tributes were made for veterans. And I thought, how many in this country will ever see those? How many will ever get to Washington, D.C. and see the Vietnam Wall? Or the World War II Memorial, that was just recently built. Probably maybe 10% of the population, if that, in the United States. But yet all of us walk under those freedoms every single day. The freedoms of that sacrifice that was given for us. So how does the public recognize? And what I realized was that the public doesn't know how to recognize. Because we visibly, as I'm aware, this is my perspective, I see that we support our troops every day with signs and banners and things like that. But yet when we lose someone, we hear about it for a few minutes, maybe a minute on the news, and then we all think to ourselves, well, we have Memorial Day. We're going to remember them on Memorial Day. That's the day we have. And I began to think through that. And I realized that, well, I don't ever forget. There isn't a day goes by that I forget. And that I know his friends forget. Or that those that were with him ever forget. And so why was there a pass, so to speak, for everyone to kind of go by and not think about the sacrifice that these men and women have been giving us throughout generations? That there was an important void that needed to be filled. And I began to attend the memorials and the funeral services of families after my son and speak to those parents and speak to those widows. And as I got to know those parents, I began to speak to past generation families, from Vietnam, from Korea, from World War II. And the two things that I heard over and over from these families were, please don't let this have been in vain. And please don't let them be forgotten. Those are the two most important cries that I heard over and over again. And I thought to myself, why? Why was I hearing that? It's because those families had to keep talking about their children, and keep talking about their husbands, keep talking about their wives on a regular basis because people were forgetting. People didn't remember. And in many cases, people wanted the families to be over it. Like, okay, that happened, let's get over it. And I thought, well, as long as there is an American flag flying freely above our country and above American soil, then no sacrifice will ever have been in vain, regardless of the generation, regardless of the conflict. Because that is what makes us a free country. That is what makes us have the ability to help other countries because of that American flag. And so I believe that the in vain part was covered. No sacrifice will ever have been in vain. And that brought me to the remembrance part, because the remembrance that I was understanding was coming once a year, except for those that I want to say have skin in the game. I mean, those that understand, those that have family members, those that are the veterans, they understand that. So that came to the remembrance part. And I thought to myself as I attended these funerals, and now as I've been traveling, that I would see the POW flag flying everywhere that I went. And I thought, what a tribute that was to those that were missing or captured. They had a flag that remembered that group that needed to be top of mind. And I thought, that was my precedent. Here was the federal government that adopted and legislated a flag for that group that needed to be remembered. And I thought, well, the fallen flag, those that gave their lives from the beginning of our country, nearly 2 million in combat, and many, many more that have died in training or as a result of service in one way or another. I mean, they deserve the flag. And as I started to look around at all the flags we have in this country for everything, I mean, if you think about all the flags that we have and what a flag is for, a flag designates a group of like-minded people. I'm sure the sub-vets have their own flag. Every state has their own flag. Every college has their own flag. Every branch of the service, there are flags for everything that designate groups across this land, except there's never been a flag that acknowledges and recognizes the sacrifice of our military men and women. That's the one flag that we need. That's the one flag. That's the one group that can't speak for themselves. Is the reason why we can fly any other flag in this country. It's because of the sacrifice of those men and women. And because that flag didn't exist, about 2.5 years ago, and I've spoken to many, many veterans and many, many active duty military and many, many families. 2.5 years ago, the Honor and Remember flag was created to fill that void, to give the public a tangible symbol by which they can say thank you for that sacrifice. Because what I have found is the one thing that these parents and these wives and husbands. Josh, let me show you. This is what I love better than a sign. This is my.
It came about at the perfect time. It was right after the Korean War, before the Vietnam War. The only shooting taking place was on the rifle range.
I've had the honor of meeting with many adjutants, tags, I guess, as you call yourselves, from state to state. And Ed Tanini has been one of my champions in terms of making contacts.
Right.
I don't know if you've heard from his office or not.
I haven't, not with regard to this, no. But he's going to be here tonight, as a matter of fact. He's in town.
Is he?
We're having a Special Forces meeting, conference for all.
The Blue Star in the center goes back to World War I. Blue Star banners were hung on windows and doors of families who had active numbers out in the fight. The Gold Star, we all know, is the Gold Star where we get the term Gold Star family. That life was not coming home. The folded flag beneath it is a universal icon. We know it stands for the life lost. A folded flag handed to a family at the memorial of their loved one. This country was built on one folded flag at a time. The flames above it, eternal reminder that we will never forget. And the words, we will always honor their sacrifice and remember them specifically by name. Because each one of these men and women were not statistics. They were not numbers. They were names. And they all had families and extended families and friends and comrades that we'll never forget. And after I unveiled it, I met with, there's the governor of Vermont. I can't even tell you where all the names are, but you'll see that as I've traveled, I've met with many. Actually, every single state that I've been in has pledged support for what I'm doing and to their families in the state. And if you turn the page, you'll see there's 2 or 3 governors on that page that I met with. The governor of Wyoming, Colorado.
How do you finance this trip?
One day at a time, literally.
They weren't harming us any there, and they were just trying to put the run on my dogs.
Governor, one of the things that I wanted to show you is that this just isn't about a flag flying, above the Capitol or above wherever. I'm going to leave you with a packet of information that I've left with other, that has copies of the legislation from other states and a little bit more information.
Thank you.
Have you met with the Association United States, AUSA, Association United States Army, and NAUGUS, National Guard?
Well, AUSA is supporting me.
Okay. How about National Guard Association?
No, I've asked I have a retired Master Chief who's working on endorsements, and he's working on that.
Okay.
We need the Marine Corps lady.
And the Marine Corps.
I'll work with NAUGUS. We have a conference next week in Austin, Texas, where the National Guard Association, our yearly conference, and I'll bring that up to the president and the chairman and give them this information.
See anything else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They fattened up pretty good?
Oh yeah, they're doing real well this year too. Governor, I'd like to present you with the flag of your own. This is a handmade flag, as I was showing. I would like to leave that with you and present this to you.
Thank you very much.
So,
Thank you.
it's my honor to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity.
May I have the opportunity to take a picture with the Bjornsons with this flag?
Oh, absolutely.
Would you kind enough? Let's go back over here. Behind here. Come on in. We'll hold it low enough so you can keep moving. Let's stretch it out a little bit. There we go.